It's story time.
I had known my friend, Mark, for as long as I could remember. We lived in the same neighborhood, went to the same school, and were practically inseparable. But despite our close friendship, there was one place in Mark's house that remained off limits: the basement. One sunny Saturday, my parents dropped me off at Mark's house for my very first sleepover. I was excited and a little nervous, as I had never spent the night away from home before. Mark's parents welcomed us with smiles, and I could tell they were just as excited as we were about our sleepover. Before dinner, Mark's parents gathered us in the living room and gave us a stern warning. "Boys," Mark's dad began, "we trust you to behave yourselves during your sleepover. But there's one rule you must absolutely follow. You are forbidden from going into the basement. Do you understand?" Mark and I exchanged curious glances, but nodded obediently. We didn't want to get into trouble on my very first sleepover. After dinner, we watched movies, played video games, and stuffed ourselves with pizza and snacks. The evening flew by, and before we knew it, it was time to go to bed. Mark and I settled into sleeping bags in his room, whispering about all the fun we'd had that day. But as the house grew quiet, and the soft hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the house, our curiosity got the better of us. We couldn't help but wonder about the forbidden basement. Why had we never been allowed down there? What secrets lay hidden beneath the house? In hushed whispers, we concocted a plan. We would wait until everyone was asleep and sneak into the basement just to see what was down there. The idea was thrilling and terrifying all at once, but we couldn't resist the temptation. As the hours passed, we lay in our sleeping bags, wide awake and anxiously waiting for the right moment. Finally, we heard the gentle snores of Mark's parents coming from their bedroom down the hall. It was time. We slipped out of our sleeping bags and tiptoed through the darkened house, careful not to make a sound. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, and every creak of the floorboards sent shivers down our spines. At last, we reached the basement door, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Mark turned the doorknob slowly, and we descended the narrow, creaky stairs. The basement was pitch black, and the only light came from the dim glow of our flashlights. The air grew colder as we made our way deeper into the basement. The room was filled with dusty, forgotten furniture and cardboard boxes, their contents long hidden from sight. The silence was oppressive, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were intruders in a place we didn't belong. As we explored further, our flashlights landed on a curious object in the corner of the basement, a locked door. It stood out like a sore thumb, and we couldn't resist investigating. Mark tried the doorknob, but it was securely locked. We were about to give up when we heard a faint, eerie whisper coming from behind the door. Our hearts froze, and our blood ran cold. It was a voice, soft and haunting, but we couldn't make out the words. It sent chills down our spines, and we exchanged terrified glances. With trembling hands, Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out a bobby pin. He'd seen this in a movie once, a trick to pick a lock. It took several nerve-wracking minutes, but he finally managed to unlock the door. As the door creaked open, we were met with a sight that would haunt our nightmares for years to come. The room beyond was filled with old, tattered dolls, hundreds of them arranged in a circle. Their eyes seemed to follow us, and their eerie whispers grew louder and more distinct.
"Join us!"
They murmured in unison, their voices sending shivers down our spines. We couldn't move. Fear had paralyzed us, and we stared in horror at the macabre scene before us. The dolls continued to whisper, their voices growing more insistent.
"Join us! Join us! Join us! Join us!"
They repeated, and suddenly, the dolls began to move, their porcelain limbs creaking as they stood up, one by one. With a surge of terror, we turned and fled, slamming the door behind us. We ran up the stairs and into Mark's room, our hearts pounding in our chests. We never spoke of that night again, and we never ventured into the basement. It remained a forbidden, terrifying place that would forever haunt our memories. As the years passed, my friendship with Mark grew stronger, but the forbidden basement was a dark secret we shared. We knew that some mysteries were best left untouched, some doors best left locked, and some whispers best left unheard. Moving into a new house is supposed to be an exciting adventure, a fresh start in a new place. For my family, however, the dream of a perfect home quickly turned into a chilling nightmare. Our new house, Willowbrook, was a charming Victorian-era home nestled in a quiet, picturesque neighborhood. It was a fixer-upper, but the price was right, and we were enchanted by its character. My wife, Sarah, and our 2 children, Emma and Liam, were eager to make it our own. The first signs that something was amiss appeared soon after we moved in. Strange sounds echoed through the house at night, footsteps that didn't belong to any of us, whispering voices that seemed to come from nowhere, and doors that would creak open on their own. At first, we tried to dismiss these eerie occurrences as the quirks of an old house. We blamed the creaks and groans on the settling of the aging wood, and we told ourselves that our overactive imaginations were responsible for the rest. But as the nights passed, the disturbances became more frequent and unsettling. One evening, as we were gathered in the living room, the lights flickered and then abruptly went out. A cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the candles we had lit. Emma and Liam huddled close to us, their wide eyes filled with fear. Sarah and I exchanged worried glances. That night, after we finally managed to restore the power, we heard the unmistakable sound of a child's laughter echoing through the empty hallways. Emma and Liam were sound asleep, and it certainly wasn't either of them. The laughter continued, growing louder and more disturbing until it felt like it was coming from all around us. It was then that we decided we couldn't ignore it any longer. We needed to find the source of these bizarre occurrences, to uncover the secrets of Willowbrook House. Our quest led us to the basement, a place that had always given us an uneasy feeling. We had explored it once before, but we hadn't ventured far. Now, with flashlights in hand and a sense of determination, we descended the creaky stairs. The basement was a labyrinth of dusty old boxes and forgotten relics from a bygone era. It was clear that no one had been down here in years. We began sifting through the boxes, discovering old photographs, yellowing newspapers, and antique trinkets. As we delved deeper, we came upon an area hidden behind a stack of heavy boxes. Curiosity piqued. We moved the boxes aside and revealed a mound of dirt. It was as though someone had hastily covered something up, trying to hide it from the world. With trembling hands, we grabbed shovels and began to dig. The earth was heavy and compacted, but our determination was unwavering. We dug for what felt like hours until, finally, the shovels struck something hard. With bated breath, we uncovered the object buried beneath the dirt, a weathered wooden box. We carefully lifted the lid, and inside we found a grisly discovery that sent shockwaves of horror through our family. It was a collection of bones, human bones, a skull, a ribcage, and a jumble of long bones. The air grew thick with dread as we realized the truth: we had unearthed a human skeleton. Terror gripped us as we stared at the remains, unable to comprehend the horrifying revelation. Who could have hidden a body in our basement, and why? Questions swirled in our minds, but the answers remained elusive. We knew we couldn't handle this on our own. We needed help, and the police were the obvious choice. We quickly dialed 911, and within minutes, officers arrived at Willowbrook House. They examined the remains, securing the area as a potential crime scene. The investigation was painstaking and thorough. The police determined that the bones were indeed human and appeared to be decades old. They called in forensic experts to try to identify the remains and solve the mystery that had unfolded beneath our feet. As we anxiously awaited answers, our home became the epicenter of media attention. News vans lined the street, and reporters clamored for interviews. We became reluctant celebrities, thrust into a spotlight we never wanted. Weeks turned into months, and the investigation dragged on. It was a tortuous waiting game as we struggled to maintain our sanity amidst the relentless media scrutiny and the ever-present specter of the unknown. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we received a breakthrough. The forensic experts had identified the remains as belonging to a young girl, no older than 10. Her identity remained a mystery, but her cause of death was clear. She had suffered a tragic accident that had resulted in her untimely demise. The discovery sent shockwaves through our family. The realization that a child had lost her life in our house, her presence lingering in the shadows, haunted us day and night. We couldn't help but wonder if her restless spirit was the source of the strange occurrences that had plagued us. With the investigation concluded, the authorities gave us the option to leave Willowbrook House, to escape the painful memories and the unsettling history that now clung to it. After much soul-searching, we decided to stay. We couldn't change the past, but we could make a home for ourselves in the present. Our love and determination would fill these walls, and we would honor the memory of the young girl who had lost her life here. Willowbrook House would always be a part of our story, a place where we had faced unimaginable horrors and unearthed long-buried secrets. But it was also a place where we had found the strength to confront our fears and rebuild our lives. Babysitting was more than just a way to make extra cash during college. It was a lifeline for me. My name is Emily, and I was no stranger to the world of babysitting. I had taken care of kids of all ages and backgrounds, but nothing could have prepared me for the terrifying experience that unfolded one fateful night. The Richardson family were my regular clients, living in a lavish mansion that was the epitome of luxury. Their house was a sprawling structure, surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens and a grandeur that was awe-inspiring. It was the kind of place you'd see in glossy magazines, where the rich and powerful resided. Mr. and Mrs. Richardson were both high-powered lawyers, rarely seen without their tailored suits and air of authority. They were always courteous, but somewhat distant, as if they inhabited a different world. Sophie and Max, their 2 children, were well-behaved and polite, a testament to their parents' wealth and influence. One evening, as the sun began to set and the Richardson parents prepared to leave for a social event, they gave me their usual instructions. "Dinner is in the oven, Mrs. Richardson said, her voice tinged with excitement about the event they were attending. "Sophie and Max need to be in bed by 8:30, and please feel free to help yourself to anything in the kitchen." As they rushed out the door, I smiled and waved at the children, both of whom were engrossed in their toys. It was shaping up to be a typical evening, and I had no reason to suspect anything out of the ordinary. However, the idyllic evening took a dark turn when Max accidentally tossed one of his toys into the basement. He looked at me with wide, pleading eyes, and I couldn't resist his innocent request. "Sure, I'll go get it for you," I said, heading toward the basement door. It was a massive, ornate wooden door that seemed out of place in the modern mansion. As I descended the creaky stairs into the basement, I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. The basement had always given me the creeps, its dimly lit corners and mysterious atmosphere making it seem like a place that was best avoided. The basement was more expansive than I had anticipated, a sprawling underground labyrinth filled with old, dusty boxes that appeared untouched for decades. My flashlight revealed countless rows of VHS tapes lining the shelves, their faded labels whispering secrets from the past. Curiosity overwhelmed me, and I couldn't resist the urge to investigate further. I selected one tape at random, inserted it into the VHS player, and turned on the television. The screen flickered to life, revealing an unsettling scene: a person, bound and gagged, subjected to unimaginable acts of torture. My heart pounded as I watched in horror, unable to look away from the nightmarish images unfolding before me. The room on the screen was dark and dingy, and the cries of the victim filled the air. I felt as if I had been plunged into a living nightmare. The torment continued, each moment more horrifying than the last. I couldn't fathom the cruelty that was being inflicted on the helpless person. Fear gnawed at me, and I knew I had to turn it off. With trembling hands, I managed to switch off the television and eject the tape, clutching it as if it were evidence in a terrible crime. I ascended the stairs in a state of shock, the VHS tape weighing heavily in my hand. When I reached the living room, Sophie and Max were still fast asleep, blissfully unaware of the horror I had witnessed beneath their own home. Hours passed. The images from the VHS tape etched into my mind. I couldn't concentrate on anything else. When Mr. and Mrs. Richardson finally returned home, I was paralyzed by fear. I couldn't bring myself to utter a single word to them. I left the tape on the kitchen counter and mumbled something about an emergency before all but sprinting out of their house. I didn't even accept the payment they offered me, my only thought to get as far away from that place as possible. In the following days, the memory of that horrifying tape haunted my every thought. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stumbled upon something truly sinister, a terrible secret hidden within the opulent walls of the Richardson mansion. Weeks passed, and I couldn't take the torment any longer. I decided to call the police and share everything I knew, from the basement filled with VHS tapes to the disturbing content of the one I had watched. They assured me they would investigate. Days later, 2 detectives arrived at my door, their stern expressions making my heart race. They questioned me extensively, and I recounted the events in excruciating detail, leaving nothing out. It was difficult, reliving the horrifying memories, but I knew it was necessary. The detectives assured me they would conduct a thorough investigation. They took the VHS tape, promising to analyze it for any clues or evidence. I hoped that justice would be served and that those responsible for the heinous acts on the tape would be brought to justice. Days turned into weeks, and my anxiety grew as I awaited news from the police. When the detectives returned to my doorstep, I expected answers, closure, anything to help me make sense of the nightmare I had witnessed. However, their expressions were stern, and their words sent a shiver down my spine. We searched the entire Richardson house, including the basement, but we found no VHS tapes or any evidence of wrongdoing, one of the detectives said. We also couldn't locate any victim matching the description you provided. I was dumbfounded. How could this be? Had I imagined the entire ordeal? I had been so sure of what I had seen, but now, it seemed as though it had all been a hallucination. The other detective leaned forward, her tone cold and unyielding. Making false allegations can have serious consequences. You wasted our time and resources on a wild goose chase. If you continue to fabricate stories like this, you may find yourself facing legal repercussions. I was bewildered, frightened, and utterly confused. Had the Richardson family somehow known about my discovery and covered their tracks? Or had I truly imagined it all? I was left with no answers, only a lingering sense of dread that haunted my every thought.
Until next time, take care.